The concert hall went silent. Hundreds of people stared at the young woman standing on stage, a janitor's daughter, her dress plain, her hands trembling. At the center of the jury sat Professor Alexander Grant, a world-famous conductor known for destroying dreams with a single word. He leaned forward, smirking. "You say you love opera?" She nodded. "Then sing Mozart," he said. "Right now." No sheet music. No accompaniment. The audience gasped. That wasn't just a request. It was a trap. Even trained sopranos hesitated before performing Mozart's Queen of the Night. The piece was impossible. Soaring high notes. Perfect control, every syllable exposed. But the young woman didn't flinch. She took a deep breath, looked at the massive chandelier above her and whispered, "My mother used to clean this hall. She said one day, I'd sing under those lights." Laughter rippled through the audience. Professor Grant sat back, clearly amused. "Well then," he said, "let's see what the janitor's daughter can do." She closed her eyes. "And then," she sang. The first note hit the ceiling like lightning. Pure, flawless, impossible. Every sound wave cracked the silence open, until even the arrogant professor leaned forward. Stunned, the crowd didn't move. They didn't breathe. When she reached the final high F and a note that could break glass, the hall erupted. Tears filled her eyes as the applause thundered. She had done it. The girl they all mocked had just rewritten her destiny, in a single, perfect note. The city never slept, but deep under its noise, in the basement of the Royal Conservatory, a young woman swept floors while others chased their dreams. Her name was Elena Brooks, 22 years old, black hair tied back. Worn shoes. The janitor's uniform never quite fit, but it paid for her mother's medicine. Every night, after the last student left and the lights dimmed, Eleanor stayed behind. She'd pick up the microphone the performers used that day, close her eyes, and sing. Her voice filled the empty hall, high, clear. Aching, a sound no one was supposed to hear, but one night, someone did. It was nearly midnight when Professor Alexander Grant walked through the back door, the world-famous conductor, sharp suit, grey hair, eyes like ice. He was preparing for the conservatory's annual showcase, a performance that could launch careers. But he was furious. Half his sopranos had withdrawn. No one could master the Mozart piece, he demanded. Der Hölle Rache. He stormed toward the rehearsal hall, mumbling, "Useless, all of them," and then he froze. From behind the curtain, he heard a voice, not timid, not untrained, but soaring, reaching impossible notes with heartbreaking precision. He stepped closer, silent. On stage, Elena sang to an audience of empty chairs, tears shining in her eyes. When the final note faded, Grant stepped out of the shadows. "Who are you?" he demanded. She gasped, dropping the microphone. I'm sorry, sir. I was just cleaning." "Cleaning?" he repeated. "You call that cleaning?" She looked terrified. "Please, I didn't mean—" He raised a hand. Quiet. For a long moment he just stared at her, then coldly, "Sing it again." Her heart stopped. "Sir?" "You heard me, Mozart, the Queen of the Night aria, now," she stammered. "But there's no piano," he smirked. "A real singer doesn't need one." Something inside her snapped. Years of silence. Years of watching others take the stage while she scrubbed their floors. She squared her shoulders, stepped under the light and sang. This time, there was no fear, just music, just truth. When she finished, Grant didn't move. Finally he said, "You work here?" "Yes, sir. Who hired you?" "My mother. She used to—" He cut her off. "You're wasted here." Her eyes widened. "What?" He turned away, muttering, "Be in the main hall tomorrow at noon." "If you dare." Then he left, his footsteps echoing like a challenge. That night, Elena didn't sleep. She kept replaying the sound of his voice, cold, commanding, impossible to ignore. Her mother, lying in the small hospital bed beside her, noticed her silence. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "what's wrong?" Elena hesitated. I think he heard me." "Who?" "Professor Grant." Her mother's eyes filled with pride and fear. "Eleanor, that man doesn't believe in kindness. Only perfection." "I know," Elena whispered. "That's why I have to try." Her mother smiled faintly. "Then make sure when you sing for yourself." The next morning, Elena arrived at the conservatory early. Her heart pounded as she walked past students in elegant gowns and crisp tuxedos. They stared. Some whispered, "Isn't that the janitor girl? What's she doing here?" She ignored them. Every step felt heavier than the last. Inside the grand hall, Professor Grant stood with the orchestra. When he saw her, he didn't smile. "You came," he said simply. "Yes. Sir? Good, you'll sing last." He turned to the others. "Let's begin." For hours she watched other singers take the stage. Each one performed with practiced precision, hitting every note, every gesture, but Grant's face stayed blank. He dismissed one after another with a single word: next. When the final soprano faltered halfway through the aria, he sighed. Pathetic. "None of you understand Mozart." Then his eyes shifted to Elena. "You step forward." Whispers filled the hall. "That's her. She's not even a student." "This is ridiculous." Eleanor's hands trembled, but she walked to the microphone. Grant's voice was sharp. "You wanted to sing? Prove you belong here." The room fell silent. Even the orchestra stopped tuning. Elena took a deep breath. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Sing for yourself." She looked at the crowd, the same faces that once ignored her, and she began. The first note rose like dawn, breaking through fog. Clear, controlled, powerful. Every eye turned to her. Every doubt dissolved. By the time she reached the high D, the crowd was frozen. Even Grant's expression softened just a little. When she hit the final high F, the note shimmered in the air, vibrating through crystal chandeliers and trembling hands, and then silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then came the applause, hesitant at first, then deafening. Grant didn't clap. He just stared at her. Eyes unreadable. Finally, he said, "Tomorrow." "Same time, be ready," she frowned. "For what?" He smiled faintly. "For your real test." Elena stepped off the stage, heart still racing. The applause echoed behind her, but so did his words. What test? What did he mean? She didn't know it yet. But what waited ahead wasn't just an audition. It was a challenge that would expose the truth about her past. And the one secret Professor Grant never wanted revealed. The next day, the air in the conservatory felt different, heavy, watching. Elena walked through the same marble halls that had once ignored her, but now every step echoed with whispers. Students turned their heads as she passed, some with curiosity, some with envy, and many with quiet hatred. "Did you hear?" one girl muttered to her friend. "The janitor's singing for the showcase." Another laughed. "Please, Grant's just playing with her. He'll crush her to prove a point." Elena kept walking, clutching the folder of sheet music Grant had given her the night before. Inside, written in bold ink, was a single title, Voce Sapete. It wasn't just any piece. It was Mozart's test of soul, emotion, and control. A song that demanded not just technique, but honesty. When she entered the rehearsal hall, Grant was already there, standing beside a tall man in a dark suit. The man's eyes lingered on her longer than she liked. "Elena," Grant said, not looking up from his notes, "this is Mr. Donovan. He's one of the trustees and a major donor. He'll be evaluating your potential today." Mr. Donovan smiled thinly. "So this is the girl I've heard about. The janitor who thinks she can outsing my scholarship students." Elena forced a polite nod. "I'm not trying to outsing anyone, sir. I just want a chance," he chuckled. "We'll see if you deserve one." Grant clapped his hands once. "Start when you're ready." Elena stepped onto the stage again, heart pounding like a second orchestra. The pianist looked at her uncertainly, but she nodded. And then the first notes began. Her voice rose, soft at first, trembling like a confession. But as the melody grew, so did her strength. Her tone wrapped around every word, every emotion, until the hall itself seemed to listen. For those few minutes, she wasn't the janitor. She wasn't invisible. She was music itself. When she finished, the silence was thick. Grant didn't move. Mr. Donovan just folded his arms, unimpressed. Finally, Grant spoke. Technically sound, emotionally raw, but he paused, looking her dead in the eye. "You're still holding back." Elena frowned. "Holding back?" "Yes," he said coolly. "You're afraid. You sing like someone who's waiting for permission to be great." Her hands clenched at her sides. Enough," he interrupted. "You'll perform this piece at the showcase next week. If you can't make the audience feel what you feel, you'll never set foot here again. Understood? She swallowed. Yes, sir. After rehearsal, Elena sat alone in the corridor staring at her reflection in the glass doors. She looked like a stranger, tired eyes, shaking hands, but a spark that wouldn't die. Suddenly, a soft voice broke the silence. "Hey, you were incredible," she turned. A young man stood behind her, curly brown hair, green eyes, and a kind smile that didn't quite fit this cold place. "I'm Ethan," he said, offering his hand. "First violin, and possibly your new biggest fan." She managed a small smile. "Elena, custodian/soprano, apparently." He laughed. "You know, Grant doesn't just test voices. He tests character. He'll push until you break, then decide if you're worth rebuilding." She sighed. "That sounds like him. Still," Ethan added, his tone softening, "you have something no one else here does. When you sing, people stop breathing." For the first time that day, Elena felt the weight lift a little. But across the hall, hidden behind a pillar, someone else was watching. A girl with blonde hair and sharp eyes. Victoria Hale, Grant's top student, the one everyone expected to lead the showcase. Her jaw tightened as she listened. "She thinks she can take my spot," she whispered bitterly. Pulling out her phone, she typed a quick message. "She's just a janitor, right? Let's make sure everyone remembers that." Within hours, the conservatory's private student forum was flooded. Pictures of Elena mopping floors, cruel comments, mocking memes calling her the singing maid. By evening, the story had spread beyond the school. People laughed. Some called her a fraud. Even a few teachers whispered behind her back. Elena tried to ignore it. But when she walked in the next morning, the laughter followed her like a shadow. Grant, of course, said nothing. Only watched her carefully during practice, as if testing whether she'd crumble. Days passed. The showcase loomed closer. Every night after cleaning and practice, Eleanor sat beside her mother's hospital bed, singing softly to her, the same piece Grant assigned. Her mother's smile was faint but proud. "You're scared," she whispered one night. Elena nodded. "Everyone's waiting for me to fail." "Then let them wait," her mother said. "You're not singing for them." The night before the showcase, Elena found a letter slipped under her door. No name, just a message written in bold black ink. "Grant doesn't care about you. He's using you to humiliate his own students. Don't show up tomorrow." Her stomach twisted. Was it true? She thought back to his cold eyes, his sharp words, the way he never smiled. Was she just his experiment? But then she remembered the sound of her mother's voice, Ethan's kindness, and the feeling of the stage lights on her skin. No, she would go. Whatever waited for her there, she would face it. The next day, the Royal Conservatory's grand showcase began. A full audience filled the hall, critics, donors, and the city's elite. Among them sat Grant, Mr. Donovan, and the other trustees. Backstage, Elena stood in front of a mirror, clutching her worn music sheet. Her stomach churned, but her eyes were calm. Ethan peeked in. "You okay?" She smiled faintly. "Ask me after I sing," he chuckled. "Break legs, Stargirl." As she walked toward the stage entrance, she heard the announcer call, "Next performer, Elena Brooks." Her heart skipped. The crowd murmured, "A janitor." Performing at the Royal Conservatory, she stepped into the light. The orchestra waited. Grant watched. The hall fell silent, and as the music began to rise, she closed her eyes, ready to sing not for them. But for every moment she had been ignored. The lights dimmed. Elena stood center stage, her breath slow, her heart pounding loud enough to drown out the orchestra's first note. The massive chandelier above shimmered like frozen lightning. Hundreds of eyes locked on her, some curious, some cruel, all waiting for her to fail. In the front row, Professor Grant folded his hands calmly. His expression gave away nothing. To his left, Mr. Donovan leaned forward, smirking, whispering something to a trustee that made them both chuckle. And somewhere backstage, Victoria Hale watched through the curtain, a flash of envy burning behind her perfect smile. Elena gripped the microphone, feeling its cold metal against her shaking hands. The conductor raised his baton, and the music began. The first few measures were gentle, a soft swell of strings. Then Elena opened her mouth, and her voice poured out like light. It wasn't just beautiful, it was truth. Every note carried a piece of her story, the late nights cleaning this very hall, the laughter behind her back, the dream that refused to die. She sang not as a performer, but as a survivor. The audience stilled. Even the skeptics leaned forward. It was as if the room itself held its breath. Victoria frowned. "No, that's impossible," she muttered. She reached for her phone and typed furiously, a message to the sound engineer she'd bribed earlier. Seconds later, a faint crackle came through the speakers, then another. Elena's voice wavered as the system hissed. Feedback screeched through the hall. The crowd murmured. Someone laughed. Elena froze, panic flashing in her eyes. On stage, the conductor shot a glare toward the sound booth. Grant didn't move. He just watched. "Keep going," he mouthed silently. Elena swallowed, nodded, and continued, a cappella now. Without music, without fear, and somehow it was even stronger. Her voice soared higher than the strings ever could, carrying across the hall. Clear and defiant. The sound system sputtered back to life halfway through, too late to stop her. By then, everyone knew. No microphone, no echo, just pure. Raw power. When she hit the final note, the silence afterward felt infinite. Then the applause. It started as a few claps. Then dozens. Then hundreds. The audience rose to their feet, even the judges. Elena stood frozen, tears filling her eyes as the noise crashed over her like a wave. For a second, she thought she saw something flicker across Grant's face. Pride. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He leaned toward the microphone on the judge's table. "Miss Brooks," he said evenly, "that was unexpected." The audience quieted, waiting. Grant continued, "It appears that true talent can come from anywhere, even from those we underestimate." He turned toward the crowd. "I think the board owes Miss Brooks an apology." A murmur rippled through the room. Mr. Donovan looked furious. He leaned toward Grant. "You planned this, didn't you?" he hissed. Grant didn't reply. Backstage, Victoria stormed into the sound booth. "What happened? You said it would kill the mic completely." The engineer threw up his hands. "It did, but she kept singing." I couldn't stop her voice from filling the hall. "Then you'll fix it," she snapped. "She can't win this." Her words stopped as Grant appeared behind her, silent as a shadow. "I think we've heard enough, Miss Hale," he said coldly. Victoria spun around, face pale. "Professor, it wasn't—" He held up a hand. "Save it." His gaze was razor-sharp. "Do you know what arrogance sounds like, Miss Hale? It's the silence that follows when real talent walks in." She opened her mouth, but no words came. "Pack your things," he said. "You're done here." Out on the stage, Elena was still shaking hands and bowing when Grant approached her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said softly, "You think I was testing your voice?" She blinked. "Wasn't that the point?" He shook his head. "I was testing your will." Confused, she frowned. Grant continued, "I knew what they said about you, what Victoria planned. I wanted to see if you could stand tall even when everything went wrong." He paused. "And you did." Tears welled in her eyes. "You knew all along." "I did," he admitted. "But I couldn't protect you. You had to do that yourself." She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "So, what happens now?" Grant glanced toward the roaring audience. "Now," he said, "they finally hear you." That night, Eleanor's performance went viral. Clips flooded social media. Janitor's daughter silences critics. The voice that stunned the academy. Real talent needs no microphone. Within hours, offers poured in. Scholarships, interviews, invitations to perform. But Eleanor ignored them all. She wasn't chasing fame. She just wanted her mother to see her sing once more. Meanwhile, in his office, Grant poured himself a glass of whiskey. The trustees were furious, Donovan especially. "You embarrassed us," Donovan barked. "You put a cleaning girl on our stage to humiliate the board." Grant leaned back unbothered. "No," he said quietly. "She humiliated your expectations. You'll regret this," Donovan spat. "You're finished." Grant smiled faintly. "I've been finished before." As the door slammed behind Donovan, Grant looked down at an old photograph on his desk. A group of orphanage children, years ago. In the corner of the photo was a little girl with the same eyes as Eleanor. He sighed. "Guess you made it after all," he murmured. The next morning, Elena walked back into the conservatory. Students who once mocked her now whispered in awe. Some avoided her eyes. Others smiled sheepishly, but she didn't stop for any of them. She went straight to Grant's office. He looked up from his papers. "You're early." "I wanted to thank you," she said. He smiled slightly. "Don't thank me. I didn't give you that voice." "No," she said softly, "but you gave me a reason to use it." He nodded once, then handed her a folder. "Then it's time for the next challenge." She frowned. "Next challenge?" He leaned back. "The Academy Showcase in Vienna. You're representing us," her breath caught. "Vienna?" "Pack your bags," he said simply. "And Elena?" "Yes?" "Don't hold back this time." The airplane cut through a sky streaked with sunrise. Elena stared out the window. Her reflection ghosted over the clouds, part awe, part disbelief. 2 weeks ago, she was scrubbing the conservatory floors. Now she was on her way to Vienna, the birthplace of Mozart himself. She whispered under her breath, "Mum, we made it." The woman in the next seat, a kindly old stranger, smiled. "First time traveling?" Elena nodded shyly. "First time believing I belong somewhere." When she arrived, the Vienna Royal Academy stood like a palace of sound, marble columns, chandeliers, and echoes of centuries of music. Everywhere she looked, there were students in designer suits carrying leather folders, speaking French and German in confidence. Elena clutched her small bag and walked inside. Her name tag read Elena Brooks, USA representative. Inside the hall, she spotted Professor Grant talking to a group of international judges. He gave her a small nod, a silent reassurance. But before she could reach him, a tall woman with icy blue eyes blocked her path. "Excuse me," the woman said. "You must be lost. This area is for competitors." "I am a competitor," Elena replied, her voice calm but firm. The woman laughed. "Really? I thought you were staff." She extended her hand mockingly. "Clara von Richter, Germany. I hope you enjoy watching me win." Elena simply smiled. "We'll see." That evening in the rehearsal room, Elena unpacked her sheet music. The piece assigned to her was brutal, Mozart's Laudate Dominum, gentle yet vast, perfectly balanced between power and purity. As she began to practice, she noticed someone in the corner of the room. Ethan. He'd come with the American orchestra to perform at the showcase. "You didn't think I'd miss this, did you?" He grinned. Elena laughed softly. "I thought you had rehearsals." "I do," he said, "but yours matters more." For a moment, the tension of Vienna melted away. She wasn't just a girl fighting for recognition anymore. She was an artist chasing perfection. The next morning, Grant called her to a private room. "Elena," he said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you before tomorrow." His tone was different, softer, heavier. She frowned. "What is it?" He pulled out an old photograph, a younger version of himself standing beside a little girl in a dusty music classroom. "That's me," he said. "And that's your mother." Elena froze. "My mother?" "She was my student," he continued. "The most gifted singer I ever met. But the Academy refused to give her a place because of her background. They called her unrefined." He took a deep breath. "When I saw you at the conservatory, I saw her again. I wanted to give you what she never had." Elena's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He smiled faintly. "Because you needed to earn it your own way. Not as her daughter, but as yourself." For the first time, she saw him not as a cold teacher, but as a man trying to make something right. The day of the showcase arrived. The hall overflowed with critics, scholars, and ambassadors. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered. The lineup was fierce, singers from Italy, France, Korea, and Germany. Each performance earned applause, some standing ovations. Then came Clara von Richter, flawless proud, her gown glimmering gold under the spotlights. Her soprano was technically perfect. When she finished, the judges smiled approvingly. Backstage, Elena took a deep breath. Her turn was next. Grant appeared beside her. "Remember," he said softly, "don't fight the stage." "Own it," she nodded. "For her," she whispered. When she stepped into the light, the room fell silent again. That same kind of silence she'd felt weeks ago at the conservatory, except now there was no fear in her eyes. The orchestra began. The first notes lifted her voice like wings. It was different this time, fuller, freer. Every word of Latin rolled like prayer and thunder. Every breath carried the memory of her mother's smile. She sang for every janitor's daughter who was told she didn't belong. She sang for every locked door she'd ever opened herself. Halfway through, the audience began to lean forward. as if drawn toward her voice, and when the final note rose bright and unbroken, the hall went utterly still, then erupted in applause so loud it felt like the walls themselves shook. Grant's eyes glistened. Ethan clapped until his palms burned, but in the front row one judge, as an older man with silver hair, stood slowly and said, This is why music exists." After the show, backstage turned into chaos. Reporters crowded her, flashbulbs exploded, words blurred together. "How does it feel? Who taught you to sing like that? Are the rumors true? You were a janitor." Grant intervened, pushing the crowd back. "Enough. She's exhausted." As he guided her outside, Elena noticed a small envelope tucked under her dressing mirror. No name, just a seal from the Vienna Royal Academy. She opened it and gasped. Inside was a letter. "You are hereby offered a full scholarship and solo residency with the Vienna Royal Choir. We believe your voice represents the future of classical music." Tears blurred her vision. She looked up at Grant. "I got it." "I actually got it," he smiled proudly. "Your mother would have been proud too." But before she could reply, a voice echoed behind them. "Well, isn't this touching?" They turned. Clara stood there, her expression icy. "Enjoy your victory, janitor's daughter," she sneered. "But remember, Vienna loves a new star only until someone brighter appears." Grant stepped forward. "Careful, Miss von Richter. Pride has ended more careers than failure ever could," Clara smirked. "We'll see." She turned and walked away. Elena watched her go, not with anger but pity. Later that night, alone in her hotel room, Elena looked out over Vienna's skyline. Church bells echoed faintly in the distance. She opened her phone and played a recording, her mother's voice weak but smiling, from months before. "Don't be afraid to sing, baby. Even the heavens listen when your heart's true," Eleanor whispered back. "I sang, Mom. They listened." Outside, snow began to fall in a silence soft, endless. But somewhere far below, Grant was meeting with the Vienna trustees, and when he came out his expression had changed, serious, almost fearful. Something wasn't right. Something big was coming. The Vienna Royal Conservatory glimmered beneath chandeliers that looked like captured starlight. Cameras lined the aisles. Reporters whispered. Everyone was waiting for the American prodigy who had come from nowhere. But behind the curtains, Elena's hands were trembling. Her black curls framed a face caught between fear and defiance. She glanced down at her dress, deep emerald satin that shimmered against her dark brown skin. Rosa had saved for months to buy it, saying, "You wear this like a crown." A soft knock. Professor Reinhardt stepped in. The stern woman who once doubted her now looked oddly gentle. "They've been waiting 20 minutes. Are you ready?" Elena drew a slow breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." Reinhardt nodded, then leaned closer. "Remember, Mozart wrote truth, not perfection. Sing what's real." When Elena stepped into the light, the audience went still. The room that once laughed at her now leaned forward, curious. At the piano sat Grant, the same man who once smirked at her accent and said she didn't belong. Tonight he refused to meet her eyes. The conductor raised his hand. Silence fell. The first soft notes began. Voi che sapete, one of Mozart's hardest arias. Elena closed her eyes and let go. Her voice rose like glass catching sunlight, pure, warm, trembling at first, then soaring. Each phrase carried the ache of long nights cleaning offices, the sting of every insult, the ghost of her mother whispering, "Don't hide your light." The audience stopped breathing. Grant's hands froze over the keys. His eyes widened. This was not the same girl he'd mocked. Halfway through, Elena hit the high passage most singers feared. Instead of faltering, she poured everything into it. Strength, sorrow, joy. The sound filled the marble hall like a wave breaking through centuries of walls. When the final note faded, the silence that followed was deafening. Then came the first clap, Reinhardt. Then another. Then the entire hall erupted. Elena stood still, chest heaving, eyes wet. From the front row, a reporter whispered, "Who is she?" But before anyone could speak, Grant stood up, his face pale. "I owe you an apology," he said softly. But the microphone caught every word. Elena blinked. "For what?" He swallowed hard. "For betting you couldn't do it. For thinking talent looked a certain way. I was wrong." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "What bet?" Cameras flashed. Grant hesitated, shame etched into every line of his face. I told the Academy Board I'd stake $500,000 that no waitress could sing Mozart. Gasps filled the hall. Reporters rushed forward. Reinhardt turned on him, furious. You what? Grant's voice broke. But I heard her once. That first night in the café. She wasn't supposed to be there, but I knew she was special. So He stopped. I was a coward. I tried to prove I was right instead of helping her. Eleanor stood frozen, her pulse roaring in her ears. The audience that once saw her as a novelty now watched her as if seeing her for the first time. A woman who earned her stage, not by luck, but by courage. Reinhardt stepped beside her. Miss Brooks, she said proudly, turning to the press, is officially the youngest soprano ever accepted to the Vienna Royal, and she did it without a penny of privilege. Applause thundered again. Flashbulbs burst like stars. Elena tried to smile, but her vision blurred. As the crowd surged toward her, Grant approached quietly. Eleanor, he said, voice trembling, I transferred the bet money to a scholarship fund in your name, for anyone who's ever been told they don't belong. She looked at him, a mix of anger and relief flickering across her face. You can't buy forgiveness. I know, he said softly. But maybe someone else's dream can start where I failed. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she nodded once, slow and steady. Then let them sing. The crowd began chanting her name, Elena, Elena. The sound echoed through the ancient hall. She bowed deeply, tears streaking her cheeks, not from sorrow but from release. Outside, as the marble doors opened and cameras flashed, Reinhardt placed a hand on her shoulder. How does it feel? She asked. Elena looked at the night sky above Vienna, bright with city lights. Like I finally spoke in a language they couldn't ignore, the professor smiled. And what will you do now? Elena took one last look at the hall behind her, the same hall that once shut its doors in her face. Go home, she said, and teach every kid who thinks their voice doesn't matter. As the cameras followed her down the steps, the crowd still buzzing behind, one thought pulsed in her mind. They tried to make me invisible. But tonight the whole world saw me, and somewhere deep in the heart of the city a church bell rang, slow, clear, triumphant.